Hello and welcome to my vlog this Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. This is going to be the first of a series beginning about the officer who journeys into hell and becomes quite successful. If that's what you want, is to be successful in hell. Of course, when I say hell, I'm really talking about a type of purgatory, also called by Spiritism the lower zone. No one's there forever, for eternity. You leave, as you'll see how the officer leaves when you want to change your character and your personality to look up to the light instead of all around the chaos that is around you. First, please subscribe to my channel, hit the bell, please hit the like button, comment if you have any comments to tell me what you'd like to see in the future or any questions as I'm giving this talk live and I'm streaming it. And I would be more than happy to respond to your questions. So let's get started. Now, this is to introduce you to the officer, this streaming, this YouTube video, and introduce you to the officer and introduce you to hell, how it works. Of course, as I said before, it's really called the Dark Abyss by Spiritism, because we don't want to call it. So when I say hell, because that's what people use, but it's really not an eternal place of damnation, as we say. So let's get started. Now, in the book, and of course, this is the book that was created by the medium, J.S.M. Ward, and within it, he learned about the officer. And so it starts with him saying, he said, I had a dream, and he talked to his father-in-law. He goes, I had a dream, and he was told he's going to be introduced to the officer. And so the day or a couple of days before he's introduced to the officer, he said, I had a dream. He goes, let me tell you about my dream. And he's telling this to a spirit, right? He's the medium who went into the spirit world. Because the dream is curious, and it has nothing to do with me. But this is the theme which haunts a friend of mine here. Actually, this is the not the medium. This is another person in the spirit world. He tuned into the officer. He says the officer said he killed a Pole, someone from Poland, who saved his life during the 30 Years' War on Earth. And afterwards, the man entered the secret service of the parliamentarians. His grief was because he killed his benefactor, but he had to, as the man was stealing papers which would have implicated many in a plot to place Charles II on the throne. And he says, why you saw it, I can't say, but you evidently did, since it was his mind picture. Identify yourself with him. So this is how, he had this dream about the officer. And he goes, now I know you want to know the officer's name, but the officer absolutely refuses to give his name, and I think his reasons are good. He shall give them in his own words. So he's standing by, so there's no danger. So then the medium is introduced to the officer. And he says, give my name? No, I'll give you the reason, though. I have a daughter. Isn't it bad enough that she should have my blood in her veins? Poor devil. Now, he's writing all this in the early 1900s, the early 20th century. So this officer is really interesting because he has this force of will that will do him well wherever he goes. And I want you to think about that. The force of will is very important. And many times in the writings by G. Val Owen, when they talk about people in charge of communities and armies or whatever in this lower zone and in purgatory, they say, this person is he really is responsible for a lot of evil right now, but he has such a force of will that when he turns his sight on the good, onto the light, he will ascend rapidly. So it just shows you this is one of the very important attributes to ascend into heaven, and that is to have a very strong will and a strong faith in yourself. Because once you have a strong faith in yourself, you don't let others get you off track. Problem is they have the wrong tracks. So let me carry on with what the officer told our medium. He goes, Goes, no one knows that I murdered those men. If it was once known, what chance would she have in life? Who would marry her, and what of my poor wife? No, if what I write isn't worth your while, do without it. But you'll be unwise. I want to do some good, not harm, to my wife and child. They say I must stop. So and he just started for a little while, and then he left that seance, that meeting. So then it goes back up here, and the officer meets him again, and this was on uh, from the 24th of January 1914. So this is what the officer says. I will start by stating a few facts which you must grasp so as to realize what life is like here in hell. Spirits over here fall into the following groups. 1. Spirits of dead men or animals. 2. Spirits who have never been incarnated. Now, I'll comment as I go through this. So there are spirits of dead men and animals. True, right? There are animals that will go into hell or still want to feed and are in that level. Spirits who've never been incarnated. Well, I doubt that. Now, I know in spiritist literature, they've said there has been spirits in the lower zone, which he's calling hell, for over 10,000 years. So he would think that they've never been incarnated. They may never have been incarnated, maybe on the planet Earth, and they were sent there when Earth was a primitive planet, and they've just, kept themselves in this loop, this feedback loop of their own little, maltreated story or victimhood or their own thoughts of evil that they were never allowed to reincarnate for some reason. Number 3, spirits who came from other planes. Now, this could be the lower zone. This could be, where we are in the Earth physical plane. Could be from different from different planets. He goes, of these, the discarnated spirits may be divided as follows. 1, elementals. Good, bad, are both good and bad. Now, elementals is very recent. There are a whole host of intelligent spirits. I don't know if I know exactly how to say, but they're intelligent, you know, intelligent apps or whatever you want to say, who aren't given free will, but who do have jobs to do in the spirit world, and they are given some intelligence. The amount of life in the spirit world and the variety and composition must be immense, because I've only read hints of other types of spirits and what they do. So there's all sorts of things, and then I'm sure there are elementals who take care of of other things in heaven and around the earth and the whole universe, as to which I have no idea, and we have not yet been told as to all those levels, because it's either not important or we cannot grasp it yet. So number 2 is vices personified. And then number 3 is evil spirits created by the thoughts of men, the devils of our childhood days. Now, a lot of these things are shadows of bad thoughts that will look real maybe when you'll see, but actually are temporary like ghosts or phantoms of terror, fear, whatever. Because remember, thought is action in the spirit world. Thought is action in the lower zone, the dark abyss, which he's calling hell, and in heaven. So when you have these bad thoughts, they swirl around. It's very, very interesting. He goes, now, he says, the elementals are the most numerous, especially on the astral plane, and most of these there are bad. The other non-incarnate beings are met with in the higher spheres, and the mixed ones often take an active interest in world affairs. Some are the guardian spirits who watch over great nations, others over societies, and so forth. This explains the fact that England as a nation has a distinct personality, quite distinct from that of any or all the separate individuals who form it. Again, he is correct in this. The spirit world, not only do we have our guardian spirits who help and guide us and try to influence to the good. Of course, we always have, more inferior, negative influences, spirits that try to tell us bad things or things that make us fools or wrong. But also the fact is that the spirit world will guide not only organizations, companies, right, but nations, political parties. They guide those too. And that's why, and of course, then also when he talks about England, England has, as a nation, itself, will get a lot of like-minded people into it. In fact, the Spiritism has said, like from the books for the Emmanuel on his book On the Way to Light, talks about how the the earliest people, like in the Western civilization in Greece, like the Spartans were reincarnated into different countries and lands. And one of the places they were reincarnated into, very materialistic, warlike, was in Germany. The Athenians, who were very prominent, right, democratic, were very part and parcel of the Renaissance and of France. And then there's, the Romans, if they get, and then you get mixed in there some, depending upon their influences. The Romans, a lot of those went to England. So it's interesting. You have to look at how the spirit world uses reincarnation and how people and how spirits, as they gather life over life, how they gather distinct personalities and thoughts and morals, how they'll put them into different countries to emphasize what they would want to emphasize and to get that country into a higher plane, onto the right path. Sometimes now, when I say get the country into the right path, sometimes what they'll do is they'll make a country devastated to reset them. Look at Germany during World War I and World War II. They just absolutely devastated the whole country twice in order then to reset a lot of those spirits. And the poor country, World War I, how many poor innocent people died. In World War II, more millions of people died, but that was to reset them and for them to learn the lessons they needed to learn. So then he says, now I hope these first remarks will enable you to get some idea of the types of beings other than men we meet here. They are not much in evidence in the set of half-belief, but the higher types of whom I, as yet, alas, know little, reappear in the higher sets. They include some of the angels and teachers, but many of these were men who, having learnt, returned to teach. You cannot easily divide and classify the various spirits. Again, he is correct. Even from his knowledge in hell, he saw these superior in spirituality and in goodness spirits come down into his lower levels to try and help people, and of course also into the lower zone, which is around the surface of the earth, try and help the incarnates. So he knows that God is in the spirit world, we around earth led by Jesus, is very involved into all spirits. God doesn't let, and Jesus doesn't let the spirits in hell say, oh, do whatever you want, you're free to be evil. No, that's not how it works. They're there. They also are there to learn the lesson. They evidently did not learn their lesson while incarnated on earth. So now they're into hell to learn another lesson. And usually that is that if you want to be cruel and mean to other people, well, guess what? When you get rid of this physical body, you'll be given an opportunity to be with people just like you. And then eventually you'll get tired of that. And you'll see this whole happening in the story of the officer, of how this officer is this very intelligent man and very determined. Even he gets idea of being the top dog, right? So this is how Jesus and God, how the spirit world fights evil. They fight evil with evil. They don't go in there like we do in our movies with someone with a bunch of guns and kill all the evil people. That doesn't work because, first of all, spirits are immortal and you can't kill them. What you have to do is you have to, like the grains of sands on the beach, little by little, you have to turn each one into a better person. And that's why we're on earth, is for each one of us to become a better person. So I'll continue what he said. I will now start an account of my death. I was walking along the Strand when a beastly motor bus knocked me down and ran over me. I should have seen it, only I admit I had been having rather a number of glasses of whiskey and was not quite myself. Now, the funny part is this. After the accident, I got up, felt a little shaken, and seeing a crowd gathering, decided to hurry on to the office where I was to sign the agreement for that patent. When I reached the door of the office, I knocked, but to my surprise, my hand seemed to go through. No one answered, so I tried to push the door open. So, very interesting. Again, this is what happens when people who have just died, they don't think they've died because, after all, they're still them. They're still there. And so then he was killed by a bus, and he got up, felt fine, went to the office, knocked on the door, and his hand went right through the door because he's in a different plane. So then he said, my word, I said, I'm more drunk than I thought. I wonder if I'd better go on. He says, however, seeing a flight of stairs, I went up them and knocked at the office door. Same result, I went right through it. I found the man waiting at his desk and a clerk at his side table. I took off my hat and bowed, but the ill-mannered swab took no notice. I said, I've come to sign that agreement. But again, he did not answer, and the next moment, turning to his clerk, he said, if that damn fool doesn't come and tell in 10 minutes, I shall go off to that other appointment. So he was there and he heard all this. And he said, I'm here, you fool, I shouted, but he took no notice. In spite of everything I could do, he at length got up and, after cursing me roundly for not coming, went out. I swore and cursed too, so at length I went out, saying to myself, he's more drunk than I am. So, again, how interesting that he still does not know he's dead, and yet he still feels he's part of the same world. So, again, I seemed to slip through the door, but as I did, I heard a fiendish chuckle and, turning around, saw old Billy, a former pal of mine. He goes, why, Billy, I said, I thought you were dead. And he said, well, so I am, and so are you at last, old sport. You're dead at last. I thought we were never going to get you. He goes, you're a damn liar. I'm not dead. I'm quite alive, only rather drunk. And then Billy said, drunk? Even when drunk, you can't walk through doors and aren't invisible. Why didn't that fellow see you if you were only drunk? So then he says, and suddenly I knew it was true. And immediately I wanted to go in search of my body. We reached the street, and at that minute, Billy saw a nice-looking girl. He goes, see that girl? He shouted to me. He goes, yes, but you don't need to yell so loud. He goes, you fool, she can't hear us. I'm going after her. And then I said, what's the use? She's not that sort. So that is the introduction to the officer. Now, let's talk about what Spiritism says about hell. This will set the stage for our further presentations on the officer in hell. So now you have the officer, a very focused, intelligent person. He is completely selfish and prideful and looking out only for himself at that moment when he just died. And it's typical people who died who have no concept of spirituality was confused. And in fact, I've seen these confused people. I've read about them, but I don't say seen these. I say I've heard them when I've been in mediums meetings where people say, I'm dead, and no one, I said, no one listens to me. And they figure out that they're actually dead, that people cannot see them. But it's very amazing. They go into their homes or wherever, and it's like people just look right by them. So now let's talk about what is hell. Now, of course, as I said, it's called the dark or the abyss, or the dark abyss. So after our transformation from our physical bodies into spirit form, we exist for a time in the lower zone. We may, since this is the area we reside in while using our dense bodies. After our souls are separated, we travel to where the law of affinity places us. So as we die, we're still right here on the surface of the earth. Now, Spiritism says the lower zone, while it's a not nice place to be, but it starts at the crust of the earth and it goes up to the lowest level of heaven. Now, even in the lower zone, there's not a lot of nice spirits there. There are the nice spirits come down to this zone to help us and be with the incarnates, and also to help other discarnates to be better people. But even in the lower zone, there's marauding gangs. They live in semi-darkness, and it's a place designed to push you off your previously constructed pedestal that you could live without faith, fraternity, and honor. So as we're here getting our body out, if we have been a worthy person, you don't have to be perfect, you'll be taken up to one of the levels of heaven. If not, you may go to the lower zone, or you may go even lower. So there is a worse place than the lower zone, and it's not meant to merely change your attitude, since the people who find themselves drawn down into the abyss don't just have a problem with their approach and outlook, but usually their entire belief system, where might makes right, and the big stick can whack the heck out of anyone who only possesses a little stick. This is where the opposite of the golden rule, others do unto you as you have done unto others. Now, the spirit realm doesn't call it hell, for that would imply a location where errant souls go and stay permanently. The spirit realm calls it the darkness or the abyss, and sometimes I see it mentioned as a type of purgatory, as I said before. Spirits are never sent to unalterable situations. God desires all of us to eventually ascend to be a pure spirit. Even though the journey may be torturous and painful, whenever we find ourselves in real spiritual pain, it's usually because a nice suggestion wasn't absorbed. Hence, we require a blunter object to attract our attention. The darkness is a weighty, sharp weapon, which is specifically designed for those of us who just wouldn't take the hint. Now, whereas the lower zone starts at the crust of the earth and rises above it till it meets the boundary of heaven, the abyss, hence its name, is beneath the lower zone. It descends from the lowest altitude of the umbral, which is also called the lower zone. The umbral is the Portuguese word, toward the center of the earth. Now, Andre Luis, in the book Liberation, travels on the mission to the dark abyss. He describes the landscape. Now, Andre Luis is a spirit who, through the medium Chico Xavier, wrote a whole great series, 13 books, about his life. He started in the lower zone, went up to the level of heaven, and then he was sent on different missions to go different places to help people. And his first book is No Solar. It's also a movie called Celestial City or Astral City, and you can find it, and you can read it in English. You can find it on Amazon. You can also click on in my website nwspiritism.com, and you can click on the picture of Allan Kardec in the top right-hand corner, and you'll take you to a place where you can order that book, or you can go to Amazon and just look for NOSO, N-O-S-S-O, LAR. So this is how he describes the landscape. The sun's light looked different. A grayish haze clouded the entire sky. Volitation, which means the ability to move by thought, was impossible. The vegetation looked sinister and afflicted. The trees were almost bare, and nearly dry branches looked like arms lifted in supplication. Large foreboding birds that looked sort of like ravens were cawing like little winged monsters, eyeing hidden prey. What was most troubling, however, was not the bleak landscape. It was somewhat similar to others I had experienced, but the piercing appeals coming from the mire. Human-like groans came in every tone. Now, end quote. The scenes described could be out any of the movies or books we have seen and read about hell, a desolate landscape, dry and populated with revolting creatures. In fact, I have a scene from the movie No Solar, which I will show on the screen, which is pretty fair representation of what Andre Luis saw. Dark, foreboding, no bright lights. So it's not a wonderful place to be, especially when you woke up and you're not quite sure you're dead and you think, how did I get here? So Andre also notices gangs wandering around the landscape. He goes, from time to time, hostile groups of deranged spirits, entities, passed in front of us, indifferent and incapable of noticing our presence. They were speaking loudly in broken but intelligible Portuguese. He was around probably the lower level around where Brazil is. Their laughter betraying deplorable conditions of ignorance. They were dressed in sinister attire and carried implements for fighting and wounding. Now, this passage could be directly lifted from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. One begins to perceive that our culture interprets the images of purgatory similar because of the inspirations from the spirit world conveys to us the essential truth of the darkness. Dante's visions, Inferno and Purgatorio, to Hieronymus Bosch's pictures of hell, they were fed visions of hell. Now, they may have misinterpreted to a certain extent, but there was similarity, and it's designed to warn us of what may lie ahead. Whereas we in the modern world have discarded such childish notions because we can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt the existence of a purgatory. We fail to notice the evidence of people's near-death experiences. Those minority of people who, instead of being reunited with family, mostly they'll feel a part of universal love and intelligence. That small minority of people, they're taken to a place where they glimpse what is awaiting them, even if they remain on their current path. So there are people that have been there. Okay, so what is the organization of the abyss? Now, seeing the strange landscape and the characters which inhabit it, Andre Luis asks whether this dark region has some sort of organizational structure. And the leader of the expedition, Gubbio, explains. This is what he says. I'll quote, "Why wouldn't there be? As in the corporeal sphere, the higher powers have endowed this domain with a form of leadership for the time being." Now, very interesting. So there is organization. There's organization everywhere in the lower zone, in the abyss, the hell, and in heaven. And when I say heaven, I talked about the heaven around the earth. There are even higher levels of that around the solar system, the galaxy, everything, and the different universes. He says, I'll still quote Gubbio, "This great emporium of regenerative suffering is led by a satrap of unbelievable ruthlessness, who has given himself the pompous title, Great Judge. He is assisted by political and religious advisors who are as cold and perverse as he is. A huge aristocracy of implacable spirits control thousands of idle, morally delinquent, sickly minds," end quote. So, Spiritism tells there's no such thing as the devil or Satan. There are spirits who have been in hell a long time and who have accumulated lots of power. These, in our ancient and past and modern imagination, we see those things as devils, but they really are very ignorant spirits who have reincarnated, been on Earth, and always turned to the bad, unfortunately. At some future date, they will be better. But right now, they are not. They are people like us who have never looked up to the light. So, but there's no overall Satan, but there are fiefdoms led by individuals who have managed to control small areas of the underworld. Those who are hungry for power and domination in their physical life continued on after death. Climbing the ladder of power in a society designed to punish, albeit temporarily, transgressors whose actions and thoughts drove them to the level on par with their peers, where the conscience of these poor souls could seek the punishment to eventually rid themselves of their wrongs, only to find themselves in a place worse than they could imagine. Now, doesn't this sound, look, and feel like a hell? Now, one could ask, why does God allow this? So Gubbio answers that question. Why does God allow a hell? And this is what Gubbio says. For the same instructive reasons that God does not exterminate a human nation when, insane with a thirst for domination, it unleashes cruel and destructive war. Instead, he hands it over to an expiation of its crimes and to the misfortune it has brought upon itself, so that it can learn to become part of the eternal order that presides over universal life. Over the course of many centuries, the matter used by those intelligences is worked and reconstructed, just like in the earthly circles. But if the Lord visits humankind by means of sanctified individuals, he also corrects spirits by means of hardened are beastly ones. Again, as he's saying this, the spirit world uses evil to fight evil. And in hell, it seems like, although not really, but it seems like the inmates are in charge. The most hardened criminals who descend here exist to demonstrate that where people who share the same anti beliefs, meaning anti love, anti charity, anti selflessness, and anti fraternity, conjugate, they would create a society founded upon only the most base principles. The result of such a culture of hate and selfishness is the perfect location to learn how the world would appear and function if everyone followed the same ideals. Now, let's go down into one of the cities of the darkness of hell. So as Andre Luis enters the city, he begins to record the sights as he heads toward the center. This is what he says. A short time later, we visited a vast agglomeration of narrow streets lined with sordid and unkept dwellings. Loathsome faces eyed us furtively at first, but as we continued on our way, we were scrutinized by hostile and dreadful-looking passerbys. A few miles of public streets filled with heart-rending scenes unrolled before us. Hundreds of emotionally unbalanced entities, along with disfigured ones with all sorts of deformities, made up the horrifying picture. Now, Andre is aghast at the legions of people with obvious imperfections. He inquires how so many have acquired such deformities. His team leader, Gubbio, tells him the sad truth. This is, I'll quote Gubbio again. There's all sorts of great information in these books. After death, millions of individuals run into dangerous enemies due to fear and self-shame. In the sphere of our actions, word and thoughts, nothing is lost, Andre. The records of our lives work in two distinct phases. Outside of us, through the effects of our actions regarding our neighbors, situations, and affairs as individuals, and within the archives of our conscience, which mathematically records all the results of our good and bad deeds. The spirit acts amid its own creations. Dark imperfections and praiseworthy qualities both envelop it wherever it may be. People on earth, on which we journey, hear arguments alluding to heaven and hell, and they vaguely believe in the spirit life that awaits them after death. Sooner than they might think, they lose the physical body and realize they can no longer hide behind its mask like a turtle in its shell. End quote. Now, what is he telling us? He telling us that we are what we are inside. Every thought, every action we take is recorded by our spirit. Nothing is lost. When we lose our physical shell, our true nature exposes itself for all of the universe to see. Most probably, we have all walked the streets of a dark city at one time or another, for we have been primitive souls, ignorant of how to behave and believe. But we have learned through the suffering we have endured that the path of complete selfishness and unbridled passion and greed never pays enough for the price incurred. And also, we are what we are inside. There are, as Andre Luis has recorded in other books, he says that when there's this like a beautiful woman and she goes to bed, right? And when you sleep, you leave your body and you go and you roam the spirit world. And from this beautiful incarnate, this ugly woman emerged from this, incarnate soul. And this ugly woman, her true nature emerged. It's like the old, stories of the old witch that turns herself into a beautiful woman, right? And yet she's this ugly creature. But it's true. You really are what you are inside. And this is why they see people with deformities when a spirit like Andre Luis goes down into the dark abyss, because that's how he sees them. That's how they are in truth. Now, they don't see themselves like that. They see themselves as looking good. But Andre Luis sees the truth. So when you see these monsters, it's how we would see them, but they may not see themselves that way. Pretty rarely. So why do these people have to suffer? So why do we have hell? You kind of said they're there to learn, but why must so many suffer for so much and for so long? Well, because not just some of us, but all of us are on the path to perfection. And to be perfect means that any anomaly, no matter how infinitesimal, has to be removed. There are always times when we are able to learn by a simple discussion, and we take the advice offered to us to heart. But at other periods in our life, we remain closed to any suggestions, secure in our minds that we know better. Suffering scrubs through that layer of obstinacy and cleanses the blemish, what that which we were unable to remove ourselves. Now, in Alan Kardec's book, Heaven and Hell, it sums up the process. In chapter 7, The Future Punishment According to Spiritism, this is what he says. In spite of the diversity in the kinds and degrees of punishment that imperfect spirits suffer, the penal code of the future life may be summed up in these principles, these three principles. 1, suffering is inherent to imperfection. 2, every imperfection, as well as every wrong resulting from it, brings its own punishment in natural and inevitable consequences. Hence, sickness results from excess, boredom from laziness, without there having to be some kind of special condemnation for each wrong or individual. 3, since all people can free themselves from their imperfections by their will, they can annul the ills that result from them and can ensure future happiness. To each according to his or her own deeds, in heaven as well as on earth. Such is the law of divine justice. End quote. So therefore, we are armed now with the knowledge that firstly, our deeds are recorded within our spirit memories. Everything, our thoughts, everything we do. Secondly, we react to our exploits by the governing process of our conscience, from which highly evolved spirits are able to read our memories with exact precision. Thusly, we have nowhere to hide from others the actions we performed or thought of. Lastly, divine laws categorize us to the level where we belong. Unfortunately, there is no shortcut, no absolution in our journey of eternity. It's not like the old days during the Catholic Church, where if you paid a certain price, you could be forgiven of any sin. The worse sin, the higher the price. What a wonderful way to absolve yourself. Unfortunately, it was all a chimera. It was all false. It was really the way the Catholic Church got to get money. It had no truth in it whatsoever. The Pope cannot forgive you. A priest cannot forgive you of sin. Only you can forgive yourself. And this is what we're told over and over again by Spiritist literature. Your worst judge, your harshest critic is who? Yourself. Because when you're in the spirit world, every misdeed you think about and you know it's right there, it's in your memory, and you feel horrible about it. And that's why a lot of people, they'll go through these really hard trials in life. And yet many of them, not all of them, because you are part of deciding your own trials in life. When you're in one of the levels of heaven, sometimes exceptions below, but when you get to a level of heaven, you are the one really that works with your spirit mentors to decide what you want to go through life. So what you look like, the job you have, the things you've gone through, you had a part in all that. So accept that and learn to change yourself from what these dramatic episodes have been into your life. So what we are being told is that there's no shortcut, no absolution in our journey of eternity. We have a choice. We can spend eons in denial, like these people have been in hell for thousands of years, fighting the process every step, or we can accept the inevitable and commit our heart and labor to the lesson at hand. Let's go through examples. An example of the consequence of taking an easy path is in the book Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec. You can find it, by the way, on PDF. Put in Allan Kardec PDF, and you'll find a lot of his books on PDF. And in it, there's a transcript of a session with a spirit who appeared to a medium's group without any bidding. He said his name was Benoist, and that he died in 1704. So, of course, this book, Heaven and Hell, was published in the 1850s. So he's been in this situation for, 150 years? He announced that he was in great agony. So in the medium's meeting, they asked him, "What were you when you were alive?" And he said, "I was a faithless monk." And the next question, "Was disbelief your only imperfection?" And he said it was enough to lead to others. Then the third question is, can you give us some of the details of your life? A sincere confession would be counted in your favor. This is what he said. I was poor and lazy. I entered the order not because I had a call, being a monk, but in order to have a position. Being intelligent, I found myself one. Being influential, I abused my power. Being corrupt, I corrupted those whom I had the mission of saving. Being cruel, I persecuted those who seemed to disapprove of my excesses. Let me stop there for a second. He found a position, he was intelligent, became influential because he was a good go-to person, right? He abused his power. He was corrupt, right? And he corrupted those who he should have helped. And then from that power, he became cruel, and he persecuted those who might have been a threat to him. And this was a monk that in the 1700s. But what does that sound like? That sounds like not all, but many of the people who became very influential, vice presidents, directors, CEOs. You've seen that time and time again of people rising in organizations who want to have money, material goods. They're intelligent, but they abuse their power. They have no morals, right? And then they will wipe out anyone that could be a potential threat to them. It's all there. What he found was there's this great organization called the church who would feed you, right? And he could have an easy life. And he rose into that. And he rose into the hierarchy of that easy life. How do you rise in the hierarchy of any organization today? You do the bidding of those who who tell you what to do, and you do it better than other people. And you say, no, I'm not going to do that because it's morally wrong. And look, I'm not pointing fingers. I've been in that position too. And I went through that period of my life where I tried to be as ruthless as other people so I could rise in an organization. I recognize this. And it's very enticing because the rewards of going higher in an organization are huge. And for him, it was huge. So we carry on. Those at peace were disturbed by me. Hunger tortured many of my victims, and their screams were often silenced through violence. Since then, I've been making expiation and have been suffering all the tortures of hell. My victim stirs up the fires that devour me. Lechery and insatiable hunger pursue me, and thirst burns my parched lips, without a refreshing drop of water ever falling on them. All the elements hound me. Pray for me, end quote. So, this unfortunate Benoist will have to spend his allotted time in his personal torture chamber. But thankfully, he made the first step in recognizing his deeds that caused the consequences that befell him. Once he starts his introspection, he signals that he is ready to reincarnate to pay his debts. Others who are hopeless causes are also sent to be reborn, but in even more dire circumstances. Now, unlike the intricate planning for reincarnation for those spirits who reside in the celestial cities, where they can take an active part in planning their life and body down to the last detail, those in the lower zones in the darkness have not earned that privilege. Henri Louis, in the book Workers of the Life Eternal, learns from a worker in the lower zone how reincarnations are planned for those less fortunate. Now, this is very interesting. So when you're down in the lower zone or the dark abyss, and the spirit world says, time for you to learn some lessons in a physical body, this is what happens. I'll quote, expiatory reincarnation involving unspeakable suffering follows due to the crushing vibrations of hatred and punishing humiliation. In the fortunate realm in which you reside, there are institutions that take into account suggestions involving a spirit's personal choice, free will, that guarantor of natural credit, may request changes and present fair demands. But here, being in hell, the conditions are different. Uncivilized, indebted souls cannot be satisfied with regard to their preferences concerning their own future due to the deliberate ignorance in which they have taken pleasure for who knows how long. And in accordance with those who guide them from the upper realms, they are compelled to accept the itineraries set by the authorities responsible for their individual cases. So he's telling us people in dire straits and in very hard situations, and maybe you're doing jobs not very well, there's always exceptions to everything I'm saying. You may have a very high level spirit digging a ditch because that is what he wanted in order to correct him or herself. So there's always exceptions. There's so many varieties and interconnections in the spirit world, but I'm just talking very general, right? So these people, they're allowed, to end their painful warning and are given another chance to return to the physical world, where again a series of events shall test their mettle. And usually there was a great example of this. Henri Louis saw his grandfather in a place in the lower zone in hell, and he says, "Oh my God!" And he really was like a miser, and he was looking for gold all the time. Of course, he was just looking at mud, but in his mind, he thought it was gold. And Henri Louis says, "How can I help him?" And I said, "Look, we're going to help him. We can have him reincarnated. And in fact, for someone who's going to be incarnated on Earth, who has really no effect upon, or very little, I should say, probably not, there's no such thing as absolutely no effect, but very little effect on the culture and the path of that, wherever he's at, the city, the state, the country of that era to ascend, is we can put him on Earth and make him like a laborer." So you'll see that a lot of people who are laborers, who don't use their intelligence, who just live day by day, are ones from a little bit worse circumstances. Not always, so there's always exceptions, but they're given that so they can learn the lessons they need to learn. They're not given huge amounts of responsibility. So they're put in that, right? And the question is, can they use their free will to make the choices which illustrate they have learned the divine lessons presented to them, or will they once more prove to be unworthy to ascend to advanced level? So for those type of people, only time will tell. After all, there is an eternity waiting for them in which they can either waste life after life in an obstinate denial, or begin to improve step by step up the ladder that is in front of every one of us. Steps to perfection and a happy, productive life in the service of others is the light at the end of the tunnel. So I hope this helps give an introduction to the officer. And what I've tried to do in this video is introduce the officer, who's a very intelligent person, intelligent with a strong will, strong focus, and how he is in the future videos on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Eastern, how he, goes into hell, the dark abyss, and becomes quite successful. And then how he becomes tired of it. It shows you how the spirit world really has everything set up for us to teach us what we need to be taught. It's amazing. So we'll go through more of that in our subsequent days. So again, please remember, on Sundays and Tuesdays now, I will do YouTube live streaming. You can always add your comments. I'll answer questions as I go, if I can. And join me, 5 o'clock Eastern, time zones all around the world. And of course, I will, these will then be continually posted on YouTube and on BitChute. I have the list of my books below. In fact, the book I'm showing right now, Heaven and Below, Book 1 of Spiritism, The Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar, is I'll talk about heaven, I'll talk about the lower zone and the dark abyss, what's in there, how it is organized, what type of spirits are there. It's all information for you. And this is what is so unique and which I love about Spiritism. When I found Spiritism, it's just like, oh my God, these questions are answered. Because it tells us about what is waiting for us. We are in our bodies temporarily. We are here to learn a lesson. And there is a whole universe that is so much more expanded and more exalted. And if we go to a level of heaven where thought is action, We have powers beyond our imagination, but we have to earn those powers. And as part of that process, we are on this campus called Earth. And if the campus doesn't work very well, then you're placed temporarily in the lower zone or the dark abyss type of purgatory. And you'll hopefully learn there. You'll learn that, oh, I don't know if I like people that are just like me. You'll give another life on Earth to help alter your character and your personality. And this will go on as long as you wish it to, as long as you say, no, I don't believe in anything but materialism, and I don't believe in God or goodness for its own sake, and I'm not going to follow my conscience. Those are all decisions. I'm not going to call them bad decisions, but they're decisions that are going to hamper your progress. They're decisions that are going to keep you on the level. Now, nothing's forever, and that we need to remember. You can be as bad or obstinate as long as you wish. But at some time, this is what spirits tell us over and over again, at some time, you will decide to turn yourself and say, being like this isn't worth the price. I want to serve others, not have others serve me. And when that light turns on, and as I've heard other spirits say, when that light turns on, you go through like level, you'll park yourself in life after life, and then the light turns on, and all of a sudden you'll just, do the hockey stick graph of rising, amazingly fast in the spirit hierarchy. And it's all up to us, each individual. It's all up to us. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining with me tonight. And I want to say God bless. And please hit the bell, subscribe, share this video to other people, and go to my site, nwspiritism.com. And you can find articles. Sign up. Hit the sign up where you'll get an email. I just do one a day, maybe two at the, very seldom, of the latest article I post. And it'll keep you posted of all situations. Anyway, God bless and thank you.